So you guys did your bond research, right?
Oh yeah.
Sure. More James Bond or more investment bond?
Investment bond.
James Bond for me.
Okay, we're ready. I think we got this covered. So one of our team members, Clint Hunrods, he helped us out here. He said, hey, let's take some of the bond characters and let's compare them to bonds. I was like, thank you, Clint. You're so creative. We're so glad to have you part of this team.
Is that hence the martini glasses here?
Yeah, that's for the third segment.
Let's pretend they're not here then.
Well, funny enough, the first bond, Goldfinger, Sean Connery, of course, that's where the famous line, shaken, not stirred, came from, the 1964 film. Loren, you did some research on this bond and the corresponding investment bond. What'd you find out?
Well, what I found out, obviously, the best Bond character or actor was Sean Connery.
A lot of people would agree with that one, I think.
No doubt.
I'm going to disagree, but we'll come back to that.
Okay, all right, I'll get to that one.
Well, all we have to do is go to smoothradio.com and they validate that Sean Connery was the best Bond.
Smoothradio.com.
That
Really?
sounds legitimate to me.
Never heard of it, but
Look it
carry
up,
on.
smoothradio.com.
Smoothradio.com.
Sean Connery is the #1 Bond.
All right, okay, I'll go along with it. So let's say if Sean Connery or Goldfinger was a bond, what would it be?
Well, he would be the U.S. Treasury, of course, because the U.S. Treasury is the safest type of bond. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. And the parallel there is Sean Connery is the best bond character. He is the safest pick for the best bond character. The way that the U.S. Treasury works is it's going to pay you typically a lower yield than what you're going to get from the other bonds. And when I say yield, that means a return or an interest. So instead of paying maybe a 5% interest like a corporate bond would, it might pay you a 3% interest, and you can have a maturity date from a very short time frame of a year all the way up to a very long time frame of 30 years. And again, it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States Treasury, which is also why, because it has the highest safety level of these bonds, it's typically going to pay you the lowest return.
Yeah, and wasn't Connery protecting Fort Knox in that movie and the highest safety level of all this?
See, that's where
parallels are great.
That's where the other Bond research comes into play.
Okay, good. I did a little bit of that.
My real experience with James Bond was way back in the day when I played video games. 007 was the best video game.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned about the different villains.
Good,
Yeah,
good. So you did your bond research that way.
Yes.
Okay,
Good
so
education.
our next bond, Casino Royale, Daniel Craig, the 2006 movie. Haley, this was your bond to research.
So Daniel Craig is the best Bond, and the reason why is because he has this lethal type of intensity, right? We want a little danger when it comes to our James Bond. So the most correlated bond for this would be corporate bonds.
Okay, do tell.
And so the reason why corporate bonds, how they're different from treasury bonds, is you're taking a little risk with corporate bonds because it's not backed by the federal government. So because you're taking a little bit more risk with corporate bonds, you may get a little bit more return for that extra risk that you're going to be taking. So when companies maybe want to expand the operations, or if they need funding, they're going to issue these bonds and they're going to pay you a little bit higher interest rates, because if the company defaults, well, then they may not have to fulfill their obligations to you by paying back what they borrowed. So it's a little bit more dangerous, but if you're a risk taker in life, you're going to want to go with Daniel Craig.
Hence the high stakes poker game in that very Bond film.
Exactly.
Okay, our next Bond, Goldfinger, Roger Moore. Man with a gold gun, excuse me. Goldfinger, I think, is something totally different. That's a movie with Mike Myers, isn't it? Okay, Man with a Golden Gun, Roger Moore, 1974. What's your bond research tell us here?
Well,
Lauren?
this tells us that this correlates really well with municipal bonds. And the way that the municipal bond works, it's kind of, from a risk standpoint, it's kind of a hybrid between the corporate and the United States Treasury, because it is backed by the full faith and credit of whatever municipality it is. So in that case, a city, it could be a county, could be a state. It's backed by the full faith and credit of that organization. And they pay you a rate of return. They're using that money typically for projects, whether they're building streets or bridges, renovating a city or an aspect of a city. They're using it for state, county, and city projects.
And there was an energy crisis storyline, I believe, in this bond, so that's where we make the parallel there. City, energy, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll go with it here. I'm here to help. I'm here to help. Okay, we have one more bond to talk about, Goldeneye with Pierce Brosnan.
So that's a hot movie, and currently the hot topic for bonds are I-bonds. So if you haven't heard of I-bonds before, this is a bond that's going to pay you an interest rate that combines a fixed rate with a variable inflation rate. So right now, when inflation is high, this bond is actually paying 9.62%. And that's going to pay 9.62% for the next 6 months. And then every 6 months, they're going to reevaluate their interest rate based on where inflation is at. And then you'll get a different interest rate for that. So if inflation continues to stay high, then you can expect that these interest rates are going to continue to pay out pretty well. But if inflation goes down or decreases, well, then that's where the variable inflation rate happens. So with these types of bonds, they're almost too good to be true, so they do limit the amount that you can have within this bond. And right now, the total maximum limit would be $15,000. You can get $10,000 through electronically, and then if you have $5,000 in paper bonds, total $15,000.
And that's one of the hot topics in the bond world in conversation right now, because 9.62% guaranteed by the U.S. Treasury.
Sounds pretty good.
That's really good compared to what we can get at the guaranteed CD or some other type of investment at the bank, savings, checking, money market, 9.62% guaranteed. So that is a really powerful strategy, and you might be wondering, how do I use that? How can I use this to help facilitate what you are trying to do from a retirement planning standpoint? And the best alternative, best use for this type of bond right now is typically for your money market or savings account. If you have 10, 15, and that's per person, by the way, so if you're married, you can actually do $20,000 per household, or if you file your tax return, an extra 10 through the 5 and 5. So if you have some extra money in savings getting basically nothing, you can put this money away in the I-bond. You have to go to the Treasury website direct, purchase it direct, and then if you cash it in after 12 months, then within 12 months and 5 years, you lose 3 months of interest, which isn't all that big of a deal because, again, you're getting 9.62% guaranteed. If you lose 3 months, it's not that big of a deal versus the alternatives. And if you hold it for over 5 years, then you get all of that interest that you obtain over that course of that 5 years. So that's a couple things to keep in mind. And then again, the 9.62 isn't guaranteed for the full life of that bond. They do reset that every 6 months based on inflation. Thank you for watching this clip of Retiring Today. And don't forget to subscribe. If you have questions about your retirement plan, take advantage of the complimentary 15-minute retirement checkup phone call.